Welcome to the Future Beef Show, produced in partnership with Drovers and Breeder. This is the #1 podcast for progressive ranchers and feeders looking to run smarter, more profitable, next-generation operations. I'm your host, Jim Johnson, from the Brands and Barbed Wire podcast. I'm joined today by Dr. Jessica Sperber, PhD in feedlot nutrition, and Ian Wheal, founder of Breeder, a cattle tech company helping producers raise, track, and trade high-performing cattle. As the beef industry embraces technology, virtual fencing and smart livestock systems are moving from concept to reality. In this episode, we sit down with Andrew Fraser, president of Halter, a company pioneering virtual fencing and livestock management for grazing operations worldwide. This episode is sponsored by Corteva Agriscience. When weeds and brush get in the way, you'll find the solution at rangeandpasture.com. Well, with us today, Andrew, welcome to the Future Beef Show.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, great. So tell us a little bit about yourself and obviously, like several people we've had recently, you don't have a Texas or Florida accent. Where are you from? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, super. So yeah, good observation. But I also, just to be very clear, don't have an Australian accent like Ian as well. So I'm from New Zealand. Close. I'm from New Zealand, and Halter, the company that I'm at, is also originally a New Zealand company as well. So. Okay. I am a city boy, I guess you'd say. Originally, my cousin is a dairy farmer, and so he went there straight after school, and I actually paid my way through college milking cows in school holidays. So I do have that kind of tie to dairy in particular, as New Zealand being probably slightly more dairy dominant than beef dominant, though that is changing and has certainly changed over the past few years. My background's a bit all over the place, to be honest. I joined McKinsey out of university, so more of that management consulting type of thing. Did some work for them, New Zealand, Australia, and Malaysia. And then I had my first entrepreneurial shot. I moved to Ethiopia to become a uranium explorer. So not your traditional background to getting into ag tech, but worked for me. Had a good 2 years there. Didn't go well. Lots of stories to unpack.
Are you radioactive now? Or?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Looking good so far.
We didn't check you before you came in.
But moved home and then ended up actually back in the US. So rejoined McKinsey out of the US, again in that kind of mining, oil and gas space. So spent a lot of time there and really loved the intersection of more traditional industries like mining and oil and gas and tech. I kind of found my sweet spot there. Moved back to New Zealand to start a family, and in doing that, kind of again moved more into that tech space. Before Halter, I was at a New Zealand startup called Vend. They did point of sale. So if you've ever bought something in a shop on an iPad back in the day, that was probably us. We got acquired by a big Canadian company, stuck around there for a few years, but I missed that real scale up phase, that time where you can make a difference, and also working for a product that I was very proud of. And so, very long story short, that led me to Halter. And so I've been at Halter for a couple of years now. I'm the president there, so I look after the broader, anything that touches the end customer. So marketing, sales, our global operations in New Zealand, Australia, and the US, the customer side, so support, launch, account management, and a few other bits and pieces as well. So that's how I got here today and how I fit into things.
So what is Halter?
Great question, and good to start off with that as well. So look, if we were being fancy, we would say that it's an operating system for a farmer, but really at the heart of it, we are a collar for cows. Mm-hmm. So you put a collar on your cows. It could be dairy, it could be beef, as long as it's a pasture-based animal. So we're a pasture-first company, and you can do a whole heap of things with that. At our core, it's virtual fencing. So on your app, you'll draw where you want your cows to stay or your cattle to stay, and they will stay there. And they use sound primarily to do that. So once they cross the line that you've drawn, depending which way they go, they'll get a beep in one ear to kind of turn their head the other way or the other way, and that will keep them held. That's our bread and butter. That's what starts, and I think that's a really big use case for ranchers or farmers, depending where in the world you are. We also do virtual shifting. So similar thing to that, but if you here in this part of the paddock and want to get them there, or you want to shift them from one paddock to another or any of those settings, we can support with that too. So similar thing, they will get a positive reinforcement similar to like an Apple Watch buzz when they're in the right direction. On the dairy side of things, we do some additional pieces as well. So we do reproduction. So we tell you when your cows are on heat. We do a lot of health side of things as well. So
And that's all from the collar. The collar picks up heat sensor or things like that. And
yes.
okay, and activity,
Picks up
movement, I'm
activity,
assuming is what's determining.
Yeah, so a lot of that's behavioral driven.
Yeah.
We're looking at them constantly. Are they grazing? Are they ruminating? Are they resting? Are they moving? We're looking at all of those pieces, and we've now got more collars on cows than anybody else. So we're at about 750,000 animals across New Zealand and Australia and the US today. And so we've got a whole heap of data now, which allows us to kind of get deeper and deeper in terms of that as well. So all through that collar. But now it really is something that ranchers, farmers can use all the time to get a better understanding of where they are. And I'd say that would be the last piece as well that I'd say especially in the US has been a big part of things is just knowing exactly where your cattle are at any given time. So there is that kind of that GPS functionality as well. So you know which cow, which head is where on your ranch at any given time, how they're moving. You can see what they've done previously, the history of each pasture as well. So yeah, there's a whole heap of information that you can get from those collars.
You can see the ones that are trying to test the boundary more often than the other ones.
Oh, universally, every herd's got cheeky cows, as I would call them. The ones that kind of push the boundaries, that are, they're testing the limits for everybody else. So the typical cow doesn't interact with halter at all. They're in the middle, they're following the herd, they're just chilling really. But yeah, every it doesn't matter whether it's dairy in New Zealand or beef in Wyoming, they're there and they're kind of pushing the limits at all times.
So there was one rumor I heard, which you have to confirm it was true, that one cow worked out that if it reversed out of the virtual fence, it could actually escape. Is that true or not?
It's true. Cows are smart creatures. We've seen it all. But yeah, there were these. There was a cow in New Zealand, and it worked out that if it goes backwards, it's absolutely fine. And so it was eating all this beautiful grass happily. We got a call from the farmer, and they're like, "We think that the cows hacked the system." And then what we saw is other cows in that herd started doing the same thing.
Really?
Hacking the system.
Yeah, and so we've fixed that. It never ceases to amaze me how intelligent these animals are and yeah, working things out. So
Cool.
yeah, it's great fun.
That's very cool.
Interesting.
And so can you do, like, you might be not there yet, but can you do things like feed conversion? Because like trying to find feed intake when you're at grazing has always been a huge challenge, right? In terms of what you're doing. Are you getting to that point of things, or is that still just too far away?
No, it's like we don't do it today, just to be very explicit, but we've got a pretty significant farm R&D team that are on farm or on ranch with cows each day, all day, every day. And they're looking at all sorts of things. And that's certainly one of them. I think that would be a huge lock for any rancher or farmer to be able to see today. And I think of all of the pathways there, we're probably pretty close to it in terms of being able to understand that. So not something that we're doing today. This is not an announcement for that, but it's certainly something that we're working on. Would love to see, and we've been able to see from kind of initial tests as well.
So it would basically be like scanning the biomass that was there when you started, when those cows moved into that paddock, and then figuring out how much biomass is chewed up by them, and then trying to predict intake across that. It would still be intake on a herd level though.
So
or on however many's in that pen.
We do that today.
Okay.
So right now, we're able to tell you, like we'd say residuals, right? So what the residual is when the cow goes in, what the residual is when the cow leaves. So you can already kind of get a sense of that today to say, across the herd, this is how much, how many tons of dry matter were consumed, what it means on a per cow basis.
And how do you measure that? Just out of curiosity.
We're using satellites today.
Okay.
So we've got to a pretty good level of detail in terms of that. And we also know how long, like to add to satellites and all of those pieces, we also know exactly how long cows are in there for, how efficient they are. Like we've got a lot of data around that. What the next level is to be able to do it on a cow level. So we could do it on a herd level, but to do it on a cow level, the reason I love that is whether it's milk, like whether it's dairy or whether it's beef, who is getting heavier today, or who's making the most milk today. What you don't know is how much grass or how much forage or pasture they are consuming to get there. And so historically with genetics and all of those things, you've optimized for the potentially the greediest cows, or those that produce that way. What we want to get to, and where we kind of see that path, is you might have a cow that, eats the most and produces the most. You might also have a different cow who eats 50% but produces 80%, and that's the better cow to have. In the long run, in terms of efficiency, in terms of productivity, even in terms of sustainability as well, right? So that's what we want to be able to kind of go back to farmers and ranchers with, is to get to that level of detail, which I think is a pretty exciting one in terms of feed efficiency. And so when you're making decisions, like what I love to see Halter as is it's a decision-making tool for a farmer or a rancher. And this is just that next decision that you can make is when I'm thinking about cow productivity, what does that look like as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, it cracks me up because somebody will have a really easy fleshing cow. We'll go out and look at cows, they'll have a really easy fleshing cow, and they're like, man, she's really efficient. I said, how do you know that? And they're like, well, look at her. I'm like, maybe she's just the one that eats more.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we don't know.
No.
And I think once we get technology that I assume that you could measure duration of grazing and roughly how many bites they're taking while they're doing that, and some of that data that you can collect is fascinating. How many trips to the water trough do they make, right? How long do they spend there? And then you can also get into the health aspect of it, right? I'm sure you're looking at animals' activity changes. Let's flag her and see why that's happening, right? Is she sick? Is she got an upset stomach, whatever, bloater or something, who knows? But there's lots of applications I could see for the technology.
Yeah. And we call it, sorry, briefly.
No, go for it.
We call it the calgorithm. But we're to do,
I like that.
To do what you're saying, we're looking at both the individual cow, but also performance against herd, right? So there are some, just like I said, that there were some cheeky cows, and there are some lazy cows. And if you were to alert that this cow isn't moving that much, you'd be doing it every day just because that's their style. Same, there are also frisky cows that are constantly moving around. And so we're looking both against that cow's history, but also the whole herd. Because if you can imagine over here in the US, if there's a predator, and they all start running, it's not a health concern, but it's you do want to kind of provide that alert. So you want to provide that alert. So we're looking both at a per cow level and also versus the rest of the herd to kind of say, to give those alerts to whether it's the health side or more behavioral stuff as well. So
how about as they move into labor, are you doing some of that stuff too?
Yeah, that's a tricky one to do. But yes, you certainly, if you are looking at the app, you can kind of start to see that behavior in terms of as they are in labor or those pieces as well. And a fun thing that you can do as well, what I see a lot of ranchers do there is, if they're starting to see these signs, or if they just happen to be out and about, which in the dairy side of things you see a lot more, you can just pause their collar too, right? So you might be holding them in a break. It's they're giving birth. You pause their collar, and that allows them to kind of go into fresh grass or away from the rest of the herd. Do that. It allows the calf to kind of have a little bit of space as they're starting. I don't know how much of this is an issue in the US, but we call them aunties, like those really bothersome mama cows that don't have a calf yet, that just kind of take them as their own. So stops that as a process as well, because the aunties are kept on that side of the break too. Yeah, it opens up a lot of things like that as well. So yeah.
Just curious, since it's in New Zealand, do you have application for sheep as well?
We don't. For the first part is there's more than enough cows to keep us busy, and we want to be very, very focused. We know that we can support any ranch, whether beef today in the US or dairy or beef in Australia or New Zealand, and so we've still got a lot of work to go on cows. There's also value in the cow side of things too, right? So for sheep, whether it's lamb, whether it's meat, there's not the same value there as well. So we're just mindful in terms of the price of a collar, how we can manufacture that to make it really good for sheep farmers today. So Not yet. We're not working on anything sheep related. Our full focus is on cow and cattle for now.
You had to ask the New Zealander about sheep.
I did.
Anyway.
Took 16 minutes.
Ever wondered if you could be getting more out of your cattle?
Breeder is the first technology company that's able to track and optimize cattle from conception all the way to the rail.
This puts the power of data into the hands of the rancher and enables them to improve their profit line quicker than they ever have before.
My decision to partner with Breeder was made largely after seeing a demo where I realized what Breeder's doing is unlike anyone else in our industry. Connecting the data from the packing plant back to the feedlot, the stocker backgrounders, and the cow-calf, even connecting that data to the purebred breeder, will just open the door to improvement at a scale and a speed that we have never seen in this industry before.
I believe Breeder's putting ranchers in the driver's seat. We can make breeding decisions based on large amounts of data very quickly. The calves that are produced, they have a higher cutout value, their ribeyes are more profitable, and it plays back to us.
As I'm out around the country, people are asking me about Breeder, and I always recommend Breeder. It's the tool for the future.
Head to breeder.co and book a demo with the team today.
Let's talk about the collar. So obviously there's a few different virtual fencing options out there.
Mm-hmm.
And like weight of the collar is sometimes a challenge or something that people are questioning. What does halters look like? Like approximately how much does it weigh? Do you notice that the cows get bothered by it? Anything like that?
Yeah, so I would say weight and fit has been our priority since the start. All of our early engineers at Halter, they all had to learn how to sew so that we could get the best fit possible from the start as well. We are an above neck collar. So you might see others in market that are kind of on chains underneath neck, pretty sizable there as well. We do everything above the neck. There's a few reasons behind that. The big one is earlier I was talking about like the bidirectionality of the collar. So if a cow goes beyond the break, if we need to turn them to the left, we give them a little bit of a beep in the right ear, like beep, beep, beep. It's like a reverse sensor. Beep them there to turn them that way. If you do it on the other ear, it turns them that way. So we're not just saying you've been a naughty cow. We are saying, hey, why don't you go back this way? And so we're kind of training them to do what they need to do there again. I know I've said it a few times already, but cows are very intelligent. They get this. It typically takes us kind of 2 to 7 days to train a herd. And so again, you're really driving their behavior as opposed to just saying bad, good. That allows us to do that. Whereas I'd say some others in market, it's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
They go across, they get a warning, and then they would be pulsed or shocked, which is kind of that negative reinforcement behavior that all collars kind of have there as well. So that would be the main reason. The other thing is to get it as light and fitted as possible. So we use good webbing on there. We've tested it in Texas on Brahmins. We've tested it in far north Queensland as well, because we want to make sure that the ergonomics are there for the cows. They don't get rubbing. It allows us to do it a very, very lightweight collar with just a counterweight to keep it straight underneath as well, which again releases the weight there. And I won't go into too much detail in terms of our specific weight, more to say that we're kind of a half to a third the weight of others in market today as well.
Wow.
So when you talked about corrective behavior, can we correct that cow? It's always a pain in the neck. Pardon the pun, but
Do you think you want to make them docile on your?
I mean, it's one, and you go to get them up, and she never wants to cooperate. You know,
Yeah. So if I go back to the cowgorithm again and how we learn, there's 3 different levels of pulse in terms of this. The cow that just steps across once and it was an accident and there's no history, they get the lowest one. It can increase for cows in those situations that are pushing the limits.
In terms of vibration in the collar?
Yeah.
Okay.
What I would say is that even our strongest pulse is 1/50th the strength of an electric fence. So this is not a significant shock or anything like what cows are used to with hot wire or poly wire or any of those types of things as well. And as I might have mentioned this earlier as well, but the average cow does not experience that at all, right? So it's during training, you want to teach them that behavior, but by far the most dominant way that we're talking to the cows on a given basis is sound. So it's getting the sound in the ear to say, hey, turn around, that's the primary one. And then there's a primary reinforcement, like a positive cue, which is the Apple Watch to kind of say, yep, you're facing the right direction. Go ahead, you're doing good. So that's really what we kind of build all of this around as well.
So virtual fencing's really sort of taken off in the last 3 or 4 years, right? And there's like a couple of companies doing it. There's been lots of news about it, and these companies growing. What's the cost benefit for these producers? Like in dairy, obviously it's slightly different, and you're maybe measuring milk output on a daily basis, and you can measure it a lot better. But when you think about ranchers here, in Montana, and I know some in Arkansas and Missouri using it as well, what is that benefit for them? Like, how do they see it?
Yeah. I think about things primarily in terms of pasture, and that should always be the starting point in my mind, right? So you should be able to make the cost of halter back from gains in pasture alone. When I kind of talk about that, it's the idea of holding cows in break to get to to eat down that grass to the right level that it will grow back again in a better way. And it's also ensuring that they're getting every blade of grass as well. If you just set them out in a huge acreage, they're going to go to the places that they always go. They're going to eat that too far, which doesn't help with growth back. They're going to not touch the tougher stuff to get to. It can cause pugging and all sorts of stuff if it's wet. It creates a lot of the cows walking on
compaction.
Compaction. Thank you. Sorry, I'll do my best to translate.
The engines, the pugging.
Well, I'm glad you can interpret.
Just jump in.
She's Canadian. She's got a bit of the English background.
By holding them in tighter areas and moving them more frequently, we can see that pasture benefit,
and therefore increased stocking rates.
Exactly. For dairy, it's increased milk production, and for beefies, it's increased stocking rate, or same stocking rate and fatter cows. So you can kind of make those trade-offs as you need. And the cool thing is I've seen that, right? Like my favorite part of my job is to get out and about on ranch as much as possible. And so like I was at one of my favorite ranches out in Wyoming late last year with halter and added water infrastructure, because I'd say I do think that those two things go hand in hand. Yeah. But they've increased their herd from 800 to 1,500 in 1 year, just because all of a sudden they're able to maximize their pasture utilization, and so they've been able to increase their stocking rate.
Through rotational grazing as well, obviously.
Through rotational grazing.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you that. How does it work? Because, I mean, a lot of the benefit I hear also is you don't have to build fences, but how do you deal with water infrastructure? Because obviously when you're doing that cell-based or, rotational grazing, they still need access to fresh water. So are people still out there, moving water troughs as you do it on the app, or how does it work?
This is I think the biggest path to unlock with halter, especially on the beef side of things, is if you've got fixed water sources, you can certainly draw different size breaks. It doesn't always have to be a rectangle and kind of another rectangle and another rectangle.
It could be like hub and spoke.
Exactly. I see that as a very common piece, is you hub and spoke it and you kind of work your way around the paddock that way as well. We've also got, I know it sounds funny, but my favorite part of the app is called map pins. And so they're just pins that you can put on the map. That way you can keep track of exactly where your movable water source might be. You can then move it, you can draw a break around it, and you can kind of keep track of those things as well. And we're seeing more and more, and we're even looking in terms of partnerships there, but around like micro troughs or those types of things as well to support with that. But water infrastructure plus halter for me is that best outcome for a rancher in terms of what can be achieved. Yeah. You hit that nail on the head though, that like, in my mind, that just doing the pasture side of things should allow you to invest in halter. Yeah. But beyond that, there's a whole host of other things. Like fencing in the US right now is very, very expensive. If you can avoid doing a mile of fence, you've probably paid back halter in your first season, for example, let alone having to kind of look after it on an ongoing basis as well. Another one is labor. And while I would never say you should be letting go of your team members because of halter, more to say that I know whether it's dairy in New Zealand or whether it's beef here, it can be really tough to retain staff as well. So by either not necessarily having to backfill a staff member if they do leave, or even more importantly, by allowing your staff to focus on the stuff that really matters, which is your land and your animals, not doing the boring tasks of doing polywire or any of those types of things that aren't necessarily value add. Yeah. Like that's the other way that you can kind of get benefits from this as well. And that's before you even get into vet bills or bulls or like any of those types of things as well. So we
you had the peripheral stuff like health tracking and predictions and all of that sort of stuff. And it, you might save the life of one animal. I'm sure that helps too.
Exactly.
The nothing greater than seeing your cattle grazing on lush green pasture.
Oh yeah, and nothing ruins that view like weeds and brush soaking up all the moisture and nutrients. Regardless of precipitation, we have to take care of our pastures. It doesn't rain grass.
The passion for cattle ranching starts early. So should the protection. Let's keep our pastures in good hands with Corteva Agriscience. To learn more, visit rangeandpasture.com.
Improved cattle feed rations? Check. Reliable domestic sourcing? Check. Maximizing your return on investment? Check. Whole cottonseed checks all the boxes when it comes to beef cattle diets. As an effective source of fat, fiber, and protein, you can build muscle and increase carcass quality with no adverse effects on animal performance. All hat, all cattle. Want to check some more boxes? Track market prices, find suppliers, and more at wholecottonseed.com.
We divided our pasture up for rotational grazing, and obviously it varies. Pasture size, how long you leave them in there, different things like that. But just something I didn't anticipate when we did it was just the maintenance on all that fence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's brutal, and especially when you get a one person crew, right?
Yeah.
And so the technology appeals to me just simply because of fence maintenance and that fence cost and everything else. If the technology, if we're able to move those cows, like you say, and train them and everything else, I think, it sure has an application for people in my shoes that want to rotate and want to do it in a better way. Because, when we build fence, we build a lot of times to the contour of the land and to the water sources. And sometimes that dictates the size versus, where if we could just draw it on a, kind of keep them the same, it just seems like it makes a lot of sense. And if we're wrong this day, we change it the next.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the cool thing about it. Like, now I'm like, here I am, 10 years later, and I'm sitting there going, man, I wish I'd have done that fence different. It costs a lot of money to redo it.
Yeah.
And you think about the amount of fencing that got ripped out across some of the farming land. Like, I'm assuming, you probably still need the boundary fence for them, just so they're not running on the road. But that ability to not have to re-fence all of these pastures is huge.
Well, and
You
I
do
think
put up a boundary fence.
That's our one requirement, is that
Okay.
you've got a boundary fence. And that's just that kind of in some places it's legislated. In others, it's just that last line, just to make sure that we are, again,
if the
animal
battery
welfare
goes
being
flat.
safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It lasts, we've got about a 6-year battery life. So
Okay,
that's not a concern.
Oh.
But yeah, it's best, and I can talk about that stuff as well. But it's best to have that under any scenario. But we see ranchers, and I'd say especially dairy farmers that do this all the time. There was one in Tasmania who went from kind of 5 hectare blocks, which was their standard piece. They ripped out almost all of their fencing, and they ended up running in 50 hectare paddocks, which is, I know, small by beef standards, but for dairy is huge. Just because they could kind of farm or ranch the way that they've always wanted. They had this view of being able to do it in a distinct manner. They do that now. And so they've just got rid of 90% of their fencing overnight because that just gives them the freedom that they want to rotationally graze in this manner and get the outputs that they need as well.
Okay, I'm very interested in how you train the cows.
Yeah. So the way that we do that is now it does differ based on, it's got to fit for every circumstance. And so different ranches have got kind of different setups. Often near where you would collar the cows, like you'd have a chute and you might have some kind of basic flat land near there nearby. That's pretty standard. What we would recommend is using either, if you've already got some hot wire like portable electric fence, use that and start by just having a day with using the electric fence that's there, right? Then what you do is you move the electric fence maybe 20 feet further beyond. And so they'll go up to that knowing, and they'll kind of get the noise, and they'll start to identify the two together. Move it a couple more times, and they've essentially learned. It's that kind of quick that they can quickly go from using sight as their primary cue to using sound. So it's that rapid. Similar thing in terms of shifts. What you do there is you just kind of essentially keep them in a smaller area. You open that up. They'll soon realize that they get this kind of positive reinforcement when they move to the new grass. So it's quite appealing for them anyway. And then what happens is once 80% have crossed into that new break, it says to the other 20% that it's time to move now as well, with that same vibration and things too. So again, very, very straightforward in terms of that. So it's a bold statement to say we haven't met a cow yet that we can't train. Again, you get the cheeky cows, but on the whole, as long as you train them well up front, then that's them. And because it's herd behavior, if you're bringing in new cattle, then they pick it up so quickly as well.
So year over year, like obviously you don't have your cows out on grass. Well, in the U.S., some places year round, but they just come back the next year. You put the collars back on, and they're like, "Yeah, I remember. Let's just do this again." Or do you got to retrain them every year?
No, as long as there's enough in the herd that have been there and done that once before, then that's absolutely
Really?
fine. Yeah, and you don't even necessarily need to take the collars off. You can just turn them off.
Oh, okay.
They're all solar powered as well, so that's another, I'd say, differentiator for us is solar powered up on the neck, and so there's no need to charge or change battery or any
Hence
of those
the
things
6
as well.
years.
Hence the 6 years. And so even if they go into barns for a period or something along those lines, we can put them in barn mode. They can kind of get by on minimum solar, and then when they come back, they're just back on the range as before as well.
What's like, were there any startups in growth mode like you guys are? Like, there's all customers aren't relevant, right? Like, there's always some customer sets you're like, I can't do that, right?
Yep.
So, and when you'd say, so if a rancher's listening and they're like, oh, this could be for me, like, what do you try and think about as like the customer? It sounds like you could start from as small to as big as you wanted to, depending on the investment. But like, is there a point where, like, do you use satellite at all for some of this? Like, is there a point where some of this is just so sparse or hilly country that it can't pick it up? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so historically we've operated across almost any herd. Is our incoming piece, and I'd say that there are two exceptions to that, and one of those we're working on right now. So we kind of don't do hobby ranches, right? So less than 50 is our kind of limit today. I just don't think that you're going to get the return on investment if you've got 25 cattle around the back or something along those lines. So that's been one limit for us, is we kind of say at least 50 head of cattle.
I'm out.
Or people who want to move their stock from NCBA.
The other one is historically, those really, really extensive Texas, Wyoming, those types of ranches. The reason for that historically is we have used towers. So collars will talk to towers.
Yep.
That way, I talk a lot about animal welfare, but that's for a kind of a no cow left behind policy. We want to make sure that we have absolute control, that you don't, if you go out of cell service, you're still going to get the full benefit of halter. And so historically, we've been kind of a collar plus tower company. So the collars talk to the towers talk back to us in your app, and that's how it works. So if you're on a 250,000 acre property in Wyoming with 3,000 cows, let's say, that wasn't the best fit for you, because you were probably going to have to invest in too many towers to kind of make it work. What we are working on right now is some more stuff around advanced communications to start to help that. We're not there yet. Again, I want to be clear what we can and can't do, but we're working hard to kind of make sure that won't be an issue for those larger scale ranches today. And if we do talk to ranchers in that situation too, we're very honest with them. We say, hey, not something for us right now, but as soon as we can, we'll come back to you. And I think that kind of openness helps a lot in terms of that communication too.
No, I agree. Well, especially with ranches, you can't overpromise.
No, exactly.
It's just never going to happen. So look, when you look at the innovation you've got now, you've talked a bit about what's happening into the future. Like, what do you see as sort of some of the peripheral benefits of everything that you're doing? I mean, I know in Australia and New Zealand, sustainability is a much bigger thing, for example, that you see that's coming out of there. Where else? Like, I could see it here being additional phenotype that could feed into genotype tests and stuff like that. Like, there's other things that I could see what you're doing to lead in for a peripheral benefit. Like, how are you thinking about that, and where does it go? And AI is obviously another one, that comes back with that.
Yeah,
So,
I think the sky's the limit in some respects.
yeah.
I would say that, so Halter's been around about 10 years.
Yeah.
The first 5 years were all R&D. We didn't sell a single collar. It was all about kind of perfecting this, like how we do it in the best way possible, the best way for our animals, but then also for our ranches as well. So we're still a relatively new kind of commercialized company. And I'd say every little bit of incremental focus has been on making our product as good as possible for our ranchers. So we've probably been we haven't done a lot of partnerships, we haven't done a lot of integrations and those things to date, but I'd say we're just starting to get into that headspace to be able to think about that. So it's early days. One thing that I think Halter does unlock is that kind of that data, like is the data layer, right? So we're moving away from a place where you've got to write down all of those things. So Halter gives you data on, what your cows are doing at any given time, where they are, what their behavior is, what their historical behavior is, down the road for beef, but here for today for dairy, heat, health, all of those pieces. And it's stuff that you don't have to input. It's being generated automatically by just having the collar on today. And I think that can be really useful in terms of integrations.
Yep, agree.
Right? So if I think of it as like integrating into system of record tools or compliance tools or any of those, that just saves time and effort and energy from a rancher. It's a very basic one, but it's like, it just opens that up. And I talk a lot about like low value add activities. Like you having to write down all that stuff is not your best use of time. You should be optimizing for time with animals and time on land. Anything that's not that should go. And so if we can help other companies in terms of that kind of compliance or system of record, that's one thing that I'm really excited about, for example.
And I think that that's a general challenge in ag tech is that there's been a lot of people that want to be all things to all people. And like the opportunity for companies like ours to integrate and other people to integrate, I think to make ranchers' lives easy is just, we've got to do it for their benefit.
Yep.
And like, but also like, competing with pen and paper, like I'd say that's our main competitor when you think about it. But you just want to make people's life easy.
Oh,
so
could not agree more.
And I see like, with some of the flooding and stuff we saw in North Carolina and stuff last year where it just ripped out fences all down, those rivers and everything else that people have to build back, and the cattle were running everywhere and, stuff like that. I mean, you could even see an opportunity for decreased insurance rates or something, in those floodplains that if they use this technology versus putting a fence in or something like that. So interesting. There's a lot of applications that, that you could sure dream up.
I agree. And we've actually done a pilot with Rockstone Insurance on that exact same thing, which is if you're a halter rancher, you're getting data that's useful for you, but also potentially for your insurer. But it does mean in the situation of a fire or a flood, you don't have to, the fencing piece is less critical, but we have actually also seen halter ranchers or farmers move stock proactively where it's unsafe to kind of get people out or it's too far away. Those types of things can come in there as well. And look, that's not our primary value construct, but I've certainly been able to see examples of how that has worked really well for halter farmers and ranchers historically too. So it's those secondary effects over and above the pasture gains that I really think help ranchers kind of understand the value proposition around this too.
Right.
So what if I'm a rancher and I'm interested in putting this in? What are all of the requirements? Like what things do I obviously the halter or the collar.
Yep.
But what else do I need?
That's the main stuff. And so the way that it would work is, so we've got we're a in-person company, right? So we've got reps now, I think in about 17 states, kind of Texas up and to the west. So, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, and then Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Utah, Pacific Northwest, kind of those areas as well. So we do stuff in person. I think that is the best way to chat to ranchers. It's not passing you on to 4 different people or anything. It's the person that sells it to you is the person that's going to be responsible for you going forward. So we'll have those conversations. Today, the way that it works is you put your towers in first, and so they just go up, and then you get your collars, you put your collars on, and then it's good to go, essentially. So you collar the cows yourself. We send somebody out to help, but it's more to just kind of give you some guidance and things. And then you're just able to use the app yourself to kind of to do everything that you need to do around that as well.
And then what's like the range distance that the tower needs to be from the cows in order to capture information?
Yeah, so it differs based on topography. Our standard is around kind of a 6 mile mark around that. So as you're signing up, you'll give us your maps. We'll say, okay, this is the fewest towers that you need to kind of operate your land, and it's all just set and forget, right? So the average tower length is 6 years. The average collar length is 6 years. The way that it works as well is it's a lifetime guarantee. So once the collar's done, we send you out some new ones. You don't pay us for the collars up front. It's a subscription model, so you just pay on an ongoing basis, and that means any issues with the collars or towers, we just send you out new stuff as well. We've found that that's a model that kind of works well, and it's not a 10-year relationship or anything. It's like you keep renewing, and then you keep getting getting access to this as well. So, but yeah, that's about that.
Sounds good. Well, look, you're on the forefront. I'm also just interested more broadly from your perspective out, like with everything that's happening in ag tech. Like AI is a hot topic. Where do you see AI playing a role in agriculture in future? And like, how are you thinking about it from your perspective as a company of how it could potentially support farmers and ranchers?
Yeah, AI has been a big part of Halter from the start. So kind of machine learning engineers and data scientists were some of our earlier hires. And it comes into all aspects of what we do. We've got machine learning on the collar to help us in terms of like where cows are and how they're moving and all of those pieces. It's better to work that out on collar as opposed to send it back from a data perspective. So we're doing things like that. We were talking a little bit about pasture and all of the, like we're pulling together models on satellite models, where the cows have been, fertility rates, weather, so rainfall, growth, like temperatures, all of those types of things to come up with our pasture growth rates and that piece as well. So there's a huge element that we're doing around that. And that's just kind of getting started before we get into all of the other data pieces. So I think AI is really important to what we do. What I'd say is we don't do anything. Every piece of AI that we've got has got to benefit the rancher. If AI is the best way for us to solve a problem, we'll use AI. If not, we'll do it, we'll do it old school. And we're a hardware company at the heart of it. So much of what we're doing is building stuff and building physical kit too. So, and that would probably be one of my guides for a producer. Is if it helps you, great. Don't do something just because it's AI, because that's probably not going to be the difference that makes the difference for you. But I do think that there's a lot out there right now which is kind of AI for the sake of it, and I'd say I'd just be a bit mindful of.
You're not generating pictures of cows?
No, we're not doing the beautiful, So that would be kind of a broader piece. Yeah. But I think it's more just to say like what are areas, what are things that a rancher does today that could be automated? I think that they are always good parts, and like whether it is compliance, whether it's staff management and like workforce management, like giving your team guidance on how and what to do on ranch. I'd say that would be my general advice is look at that. And if it can help you, if it can make your life better, fantastic. But that's where ag tech should be going forward.
Well, and I think one of the big praises to your business is like when I've spoken to people in Australia who have been using it in Tasmania, and they've said the benefit is like staff retention. Like we now have staff that will only they're like, I'm not working on that dairy because they don't have Halter.
Yeah.
And it's like just the ease that it means that they can operate and how they work and all of that sort of thing. On the counter, I've also heard of circumstances where farmers and ranchers are waking up at 2 a.m. just to check their cows are okay and their wife's going to kill them. But that's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But it's like it sounds like labor's a big issue here in the US, and that keeping staff and retaining staff is a big thing that comes with it as well.
There's nothing greater than seeing your cattle grazing on lush green pasture.
Oh yeah, and nothing ruins that view like weeds and brush soaking up all the moisture and nutrients. Regardless of precipitation, We have to take care of our pastures. It doesn't rain grass.
The passion for cattle ranching starts early. So should the protection. Let's keep our pastures in good hands with Corteva Agriscience. To learn more, visit rangeandpasture.com.
Improved cattle feed rations? Check. Reliable domestic sourcing? Check. Maximizing your return on investment? Check. Whole cottonseed checks all the boxes when it comes to beef cattle diets. As an effective source of fat, fiber, and protein, you can build muscle and increase carcass quality with no adverse effects on animal performance. All hat, all cattle. Want to check some more boxes? Track market prices, find suppliers, and more at wholecottonseed.com.
Yeah, the other thing that's meant a lot to me personally has been discussions around succession as well, because I know it can be tougher to get younger generations back on ranch in certain cases. And I think that's another thing that I've seen, which has been pretty special too, is, they are seeing, we can eliminate some of the not so good jobs or the not value adding jobs, which allows us to do the stuff that matters.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's really exciting too, is when that happens.
Yeah.
And when you hear stories of families bringing the next generation back that maybe moved off ranch back on because they're excited by Halter, that's another one that's, I think means a lot to me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just excited in general, right, about the opportunity to use technologies and all of these different. I think, not just always doing things the way we've always done it. As for the new generation coming into the farming and ranching sector, it's like, hey, we know how to use a cell phone really well and an iPad and a computer. Like, let's set things up and monitor and test and make things better. So I think it's a really cool opportunity to introduce technology into the next generation of farmers and ranchers.
Yeah.
Are there, so for maybe listeners that might be interested, are there any opportunities for like government assistance in any of this, and how would they go about checking on that?
Yeah, there definitely is. And we've certainly seen it at a state level in particular, where where funding bodies are getting involved and supporting. And I'd say in like a Colorado or Wyoming, recently in particular, we've probably seen a good 50% of all ranches coming on with some kind of funding too.
Okay.
The best thing that I'd say is to have a chat to your Halter rep, because they're across all of that stuff to say, these are the funding mechanisms right now. This is what's happening. As an example, there was one in Missouri recently, which was time bound, but we're able to kind of say, okay, get your stuff in now, and we can support you with that. So I would say start there, because it's a great way to fund some of Halter, some of that upfront cost perhaps as well. And there are definitely funding bodies out there that are excited about it too.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know when we put ours in, it was part of a fence out your stream sort of, subsidy type deal and so I would assume that there's some of that available, because it's probably cheaper than all the fencing and all that. And so it's better. It's a win-win all the way around. And so
it's cheaper. If there's a flood, it doesn't go anywhere. One that I haven't seen in the US, but an interesting use case that we had in New Zealand is we had a government change, and as part of it, they increased their expectation of how closely you could fence waterways. And so they went from kind of 15 feet to 30 feet. And so if you had fencing, that would have been a huge cost to move all of that.
Right.
If you had Halter, you just drew a different break on your phone. And so that's the stuff that I think will change even more and more in the future. But just having that flexibility there just can make all the difference for farmers and ranchers when they've got so much to focus on today, doing brilliant work on a day-to-day basis. Is like, let's make it easier for them, and let's make it more productive for them as well.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, the tower doesn't need an electrical hookup.
No, that's all solar as well.
Okay.
So that's solar. If there's cell service for the tower, it ties into that. If not, we use Starlink at the tower level to make sure that we're kind of getting the data there as well. So all of the stuff, whether it's the collar or the tower, doesn't need any kind of electrical stuff. We do it ourselves, and it's all solar dominant.
Good to know.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Have you had any pushback on just the aesthetics of it? This cow with a collar on doesn't really look normal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased, obviously. I think ours makes them look quite stylish. But
The aunties.
yeah,
like color.
it's all black. You can't go wrong with black.
Put some put some bling on there.
No, not
Bedazzle. That was it. Bedazzle.
no, haven't had too much stuff there as well. They are quite subtle. They go around the neck. As I said, there's a small counterweight underneath. That's just to kind of keep them going the right way. No, haven't had any kind of issues in terms of that from our kind of producers as well.
Do the cows care?
Cows don't care.
Okay.
You'll see.
Well, are you asking, do they care what color it is?
Do they have it on?
You'll see, and one of my favorite things is to get out and do the collarings because it's a great time to, spend with ranchers and have chats and do all that as well. You do see for probably the first couple of minutes that they'll like be looking around and that side of things as well. And through the training as well, I think it can be, when they first hear the sound, there's a bit of, oh, what's that? But genuinely, there's once you get past that, there's nothing. And I'd say like I still have this memory of the first time that I saw a halter in action, and it was in it was in New Zealand. It was a dairy farm, but walked into this paddock. The first thing I'd say is that the cows didn't even really notice me because all of a sudden the attachment of humans to food was gone, or humans to milking, right? It was all just done by the collar. So you could walk happily amongst the cows, whereas normally they'd all panic and move. But the way that I'd almost describe it is peaceful, because there's no, normally there's quad bikes moving the animals, there's dogs, there's horses, any of those things. There was none of that. And what would happen is they would get a vibration, they just kind of stood up on their own, they started walking to the gate, and that was it. And I think that was one of the times that I was sold on halter. I was like, wow, to see this and the impact that it can have is pretty special. But I'd say once you see that, you can't, and you compare it to how you would normally shift cattle, forget even holding them in electric fences or anything, but just how to shift cattle. And it just changes your mindset and shows you, they don't care. And in fact, in the next season and the next season after that, it's just going to get easier and easier, and they get more and more comfortable with it as well.
Good. Well, it's been great having you on the show. And
we learned some New Zealand slang.
We did.
We haven't even called him a Kiwi yet.
No, I appreciate it. No, thank you so much for having me. And it's it's great to be able to have these chats, and very, very excited about the future of the beef in the US as well and beyond. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much
you.
for making the trip.
Stay tuned. It's time for Ian, Jess, and I to go behind the beef. So that was fun.
Yeah, lots of energy and excitement around the virtual fencing space. I think it's something that producers have been hearing about and talking about over the last few years. And it's I just think it's a really, really cool innovation that will help a lot of producers and the ones that are interested in rotational grazing and things like that.
Well, and it's funny because, it's the future of beef show, so all three of us get geeked out on new technology.
Yeah.
Right? Not everybody might, but I thought it was.
It's the future of beef, right? Like, this is what's happening, and I think, the thing I'd say about it is it's the peripheral benefits that people are also getting out of it. Like, if people are focusing on, well, it's going to save me on fencing. Like, you think about what it can do with health, what it can do with grazing, what it can do with labor, like all of these sort of things that can go with it. Like, it has been, now there is a cost to it, obviously, but there's a cost to having staff and building fences and all of that sort of stuff. And so people obviously need to do their own ROI when they're looking at this and do their own models. But, I think it is amazing what some of this technology will be able to do.
The technology in general is fascinating. And of course, Andrew's very enthusiastic about it and gets us kind of enthusiastic about it. And that's all good.
And having been through a startup phase, what I like is they spent 5 years getting it right.
Yeah.
And we had to do the same. Like, it's very hard in farming to have a beta product and go out there. And by beta, I mean an early stage one that you're testing, because people will reject it pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And they've spent the time to get it right, had their engineers sewing. I'm assuming they still are. I think that's really good. So they practically know what works and doesn't work. And, I think that's super important when you're starting to roll things like this out.
Well, what I found interesting is there's so many different applications that are unique to your cattle operation, right?
Yeah.
Past the fence part of it, but you could think of, depending on where you're at and what your needs are, there's tons of other things that they could do.
And collecting the data, right? Like we see that as like there's certain phenotypes in our like supply chain system we can't collect because people collect them very, very differently depending on which farm you're on. And like to have a system that can collect it in a consistent way, very, very exciting. Like the stuff you could do with genomic predictions and all sorts of prediction models after that. Docility scores, I'm sure, could be automated, as you start to think about some of these things as well.
Well, and I mean, I just think about like we run different bulls with different sets of cows.
Yeah.
And inevitably you're going to have a calf pop up out of a bull you didn't think it should have been out of, right? And you can go back on this and say, oh, look, this bull got into this pasture at this point and we didn't know about it.
You can see how often your neighbor takes your bull across to his.
Yeah, exactly. Or your neighbor's bull gets over on your side.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Anyway, no, look, that was great. And, Future of Beef, and I think they're doing some really interesting stuff. And, there's other people out there doing similar stuff, but it was great to hear about virtual fencing because I know we had a few messages on the socials for people asking, let's talk about virtual fencing.
That's it for this episode of the Future of Beef Show. And a big thank you to our guest for joining us and sharing their experience and insights on this topic. Hit the subscribe button for more great episodes like this one. If you want to dig deeper into what you heard today, head over to futureofbeef.com, where you'll find free resources and helpful links. Don't forget, we'll pick one listener to win this exclusive Future of Beef Yeti Cooler. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram and drop us a message for a chance to win. Until next time, keep your boots on the ground and your eyes on the future.